So we're going to start with a heavy subject, actually, but very practical. It's about decarbonization and what's the strategy and steps to achieve it for neutrality. So Guillaume de Vesvrotte, you are co-founder of We Don't Need Roads. Celine Olesen, you are Senior Corporate Partnership Manager of Climeworks. And Julien, you are Director Region Zurich Lucern of Lausinger Marazzi. There will be a Q&A session at the end of the panel, so please keep your question for the last minutes of this panel. So we're going to start straight away to dive into the subject. So we've heard the name of your company, but what is the goal really of your company?
We Don't Need Roads has been created 2 years ago to fight climate change. So that's the main purpose of the company. And so we built an innovation bureau, a brand studio, and a business team and a global group of 600 experts in 40 countries to help companies build bold and fast carbon strategies and climate strategies. And so that's the purpose of the company. And so we work with global companies to pivot towards a more ambitious climate strategy, and we help smaller companies to get faster and simpler, on these climate strategies that could seem very complicated to tackle.
To tackle, right. So it's quite focused, but then you say improve, meaning that we're not, that the consciousness is not there yet, or?
It's complicated. The consciousness seems to grow, so business leaders are more and more accurate on that kind of topics. Some are late but willing to improve. Some are quite advanced, but their company needs to improve, and so we come and help. This is actually the first step of a good strategy. It's like, okay, how do you build knowledge and awareness, awareness and knowledge in the right order in your company, in your structure?
Sure, thank you. Celine, so tell us a bit more about Climeworks and your mission into that company, please.
Yeah, sure. So Climeworks is a Swiss company which was founded in 2009 by Jan Wurzbacher and Christoph Gebhardt. They developed the company when they were at the ETH, so during their PhD. And basically what Climeworks aims at is inspiring 1 billion people to remove CO2 from the air. And we're doing that through developing a technology called direct air capture. And I think we can say a bit more about that afterwards. I'm not sure how deep I should go in the topic, but basically we're capturing CO2 from the air with our direct air capture machines and then permanently storing it underground. And we're bringing the service of carbon dioxide removal to market to enable companies and individuals to really remove their unavoidable CO2 emissions.
So you capture, and then in what form? Is it solid? Is it?
So we capture it in a gas form. Really, we have a very selective filter in our CO2 collectors, and we capture it in the gas form. So the filter will really selectively capture CO2 molecules when the air is flowing through the collectors, and then we collect it in a gas form. We liquefy it. We then currently the way we're storing it, we're mixing it with water and storing it permanently underground, and it actually then turns into stone. So the fact that we can say it's permanent storage, it's really because we're mixing it with this water and then storing it underground in the stone form. So it's really safe and permanent storage.
Excellent. Julien, we probably all know what Lausinger Marazzi does, but why should your company speak about decarbonization?
Yeah, so Lausinger, we are part of a big construction group, so we are probably the bad guys around the table, so we consume a lot of carbon to build, to provide living space where people are living, working, hospital and so on. So having said that, we really try to mitigate our impact, and I will just focus on 2 points. The first one is impact of energy or CO2 we do consume ourselves, so that's trucks of deliveries, that's when we have a project site, the energy we use to make our cranes moving and lifting and so on. But that at the end is a small amount. What is the biggest amount is the carbon we buy to the cement supplier, to the steel supplier, to all our supply chain, and that's the big amount. And you must know that buildings, infrastructures represent a big part of the total CO2 consumption of the world, so we do have a major role to play to try to limit these CO2 emission, and we'll come to that a little bit later.
So you say bad guys, but you're unavoidable, so...
Yeah.
On the other hand, so...
Yeah. We do always need a roof, so yes, we...
If I may, I don't really agree with the bad guys term. So just for you to be comfortable with that, I think that there is no bad guys. There is only jobs to be done, right? Yeah. And so, well, as a matter of fact, with the years, I learned that some companies are actual bad guys, and you are not amongst them. And you said it's complicated. It's that, we are talking about carbon, and we are drinking in plastic bottles. So that's, a very good sign. Like, everything is very ecological here, and we drink in plastic bottle because it's never perfect. No, I'm sorry. I know. I created some events, so I know the struggle. I know how it can be complicated, and it's like this in a company. Like, okay, you can't be perfect. It's only job to be done. How can you be the boldest as possible, as fast as possible, and that's it. If you're just really ambitious, well, we're all going to be fine. The problem is that actually right now companies are not ambitious enough.
Definitely. So Guillaume, then, according to you, what are the steps to start decarbonization?
Well, the first step should be measuring. So everything starts with always with a carbon measurement. So you work with companies who will just do the figures and tell you where are the gaps, where are the problems you have. And then you will start a carbon strategy that will use, well, basically, even if every company is very different, it's always quite based on the same scheme. Like you have measurement, then you write a strategy, or you improve a strategy, because a lot of companies already have a strategy, but it's not bold enough, it's not fast enough. And then when you have given muscles or written or rewritten this strategy, you have to make it happen. And this is basically where quite every company fails. Like when you want to make it happen, you have to actually reduce your carbon footprint. So that's the first step. Then you will have like, let's call this a glass floor, because you can't go lower, then you will need to innovate. So that's why we have this innovation bureau. Like, okay, once you have reduced everything, you will need to innovate to go further. But still, you will still have a glass floor. And so then you will need to partner with some other companies or capturing companies. And you have a capture strategy. And so this is how we met with Climeworks. So Climeworks is actually as well a client, as well a solution that we offer to companies just to go further and even maybe become climate positive at one point. And that's it. So, but basically all the strategies are quite in the same order. Like, okay, you measure, you have a strategy, then you reduce, then you innovate, and then you capture. So
indeed, to follow up on that, Celine, how do you approach companies? So it means that they've measured already, they've got their accounting on CO2 done.
That would be the ideal scenario, definitely. So when we start speaking with the company, we have different cases. Some come with us and are at the very start of their sustainability journey. And in this case, we would rather orient them towards companies like We Don't Need Roads to really establish the strategy to start with and to figure out what is avoidable and what is unavoidable. Because we want to make sure that when implementing direct air capture as a final solution, it's really targeting unavoidable emissions and not something that they could have reduced by implementing the right strategy to start. So that's the one case. And the other case is they've done their whole homework before coming to us. They know exactly the sorts of volume they want to have captured. And ideally, this will be over several years. So they know they want to reserve significant volumes over the coming years from the Climeworks plant. And this is where we can really start talking about exactly that, so starting really reserving volumes from our different plants and establishing that in their portfolio of solutions to tackle their CO2 emissions.
Then the hypothesis is that really the accounting of CO2 is correct or valuable, or so it means that the measure is relevant? Definitely. The measurement is key, and there are different ways today to capture the CO2 emissions in different sorts of industries, and this is really, I think here, finding the right partner for measuring and having the real accounting of CO2 being done, it's very important for all sorts of companies, from small to very big, I would say. Yeah, it doesn't depend on the side. Julien, you're not the bad guy, but I have a nasty question actually for you, so we're going to start straight. So how ambitious are your decarbonisation targets? What is the time horizon? How do you think you're going to achieve it? Yeah, that's the big one. Yeah, let's go for it.
So we of course want to follow a Paris Agreement, so by 2050, but we believe we need to have short-term targets. That's too far away. So we decided to, as a target, to set up minus 30% of CO2 by 2030. Okay? So first question is measurement. And that's not a simple question, because there is today no real clear codes. How do you measure CO2 of a building? So that's the first question. Second question is, okay, minus 30, you compare it to what? Is it to your turnover? So at per millions of dollars of activities of turnover, you want to use 30% less carbon? Or is it per usage? That means for 1 square meter of building I am building, I want to use 30% less of carbon. So even if at start it's easy to say, okay, minus 30, we started by having many questions behind this target, okay? And then when you have find a way to measure properly, when you have clarified what is exactly the minus 30 you are targeting, you start thinking, okay, how do I reach that? And what you realize very quickly is two things. First thing is to reach minus 30% in 2030, you need to start now. Because in a construction world, everything is very slow. There is a lot of time needed to make things moving. And so if you do not work very hard today, forget it about tomorrow is already 2030. So first point is we need to move very fast. And second point is we need everybody. We do not find one solutions. For example, okay, remove concrete, put a whole building with wood everywhere, and your job is done. No, that doesn't work. You really need, and that's why we are here today, and that's why also you are here today, we really need everybody, intelligence, innovations, to be able to achieve that. That's not an easy path.
So Celine, tell us, how do you get your clients or your prospects to get to that knowledge and awareness?
By discussing with them. And I think this point of urgency to start now is extremely important because it's exactly the same where we're at. We need to start today, and companies who are interested in including very high quality carbon dioxide removal in their sustainability strategy also need to think very long term. So I think this is where we really need to educate. So of course there's a yearly CO2 accounting, there's a yearly offset portfolio to establish, but it's also about thinking very long term when we think about developing these really big scales of high-quality carbon dioxide removal with new technologies like ours. So I think this is where we're really trying to put the focus in terms of educating the customers. And the way we do it is really by discussing with them, I would say. So we have talks with our customers, different calls and so on, of course. Now we're also organizing a DAC summit, so a direct air capture summit, really focused on bringing knowledge about these new technologies to companies and private individuals. So I think this is where the role of Climeworks is coming in, and participating in such events, of course, to really speak about the technology.
And really, who are the people you're speaking to? What level in the company are they? Do you need to speak to the board members, to the C-level, to everyone?
That's a great question.
Or then spread it? I don't know, is there a key point and then it follows on?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say we also have an ideal case where the sustainability strategy is really driven by C-level. So this is where we know we'll be able to implement the partnership fast, and that there's a real will from the company to do some work in this direction. Also because the service we're currently offering is not the cheapest. So carbon dioxide removal from Climeworks will cost about 800 to 1,000 Swiss francs per ton of removal. So it's much more expensive than what you have from other solutions like reforestation or other nature-based solutions currently on the market. So it's really about finding the right sponsor within a company to bring the sustainability strategy to life and to bring this this collaboration with a high quality carbon dioxide removal provider like Climeworks. So C-level, definitely interesting, but also I would say the more usual partner we have within a company would be a sustainability manager, someone who's really responsible for driving the strategy internally.
Right, so it means that the company needs to be ready. So you say, Guillaume, that timing is it's now. But could you be a bit more precise? It means you need to be ready into the company to get in and dive into the subject and really act. So it means that there is awareness, measurement, I don't know, building knowledge, and then act. Or can you be a bit more precise about the timing?
That's a tricky question. I think, I think, yeah, you got me. I think that awareness comes before the carbon measurement. I think that at some time, someone in the company says, okay, we have a problem, we have to measure it, and usually it comes from the legal constraint. Like recently, I have a very good example on that. The European Parliament is voting right now a bench of 54 laws that is called the European Green Deal. And that bench of laws is very, very hard for companies. It's going to be really, really a constraint for them. And everything will be finally voted next year. So in 18 months from now, they will have a totally different business context. And companies that were claiming to be sustainable will be just on the average, and they will lose the edge. And companies that are not far enough will become not allowed actually on the European market. And it's very fast. 18 months is very, very fast when you have to change your products and your models. And so basically right now, every single company in Europe is just looking for a way to measure the carbon and to find out if they have a problem and if they are good at it. And so I would say that there are two categories, well, a million of categories, but two main categories. The global companies or big companies, because they have lobbyists in Brussels, they have the news, and they have a department that is in charge of compliance, and they have people, even when you go to, we have a client, Decathlon, and we work for them at the global level on their climate strategy. They have 40 people in Lille just focused on the climate strategy. So they have, they work on the thing. But it's also very complicated for them, very much complicated. For smaller companies, they are not, accustomed to know about the next laws or, to know what's going to happen on the market in the next 3 to 4 years and that kind of things. And so they are really, trapped in that situation. Like, okay, right now, it's an emergency. We have to adapt. We have to measure the carbon to know where the problem is, and we have to go very fast on that because then we will have to act, and we have very few time. And so this is how it goes for smaller companies. Like, they are really more victims of the situation, and they need to act even faster. And so I think it's not really about few of our clients, maybe 25% of our clients, well, it's not that few, but 25% of our clients are really like, yeah, I really want to change the world. I really want to, I don't know, save dolphins or I don't know what. But the main part of our clients are really in an emergency, a technical emergency. They need to work on the climate, work on carbon, and it's a matter of survival, even for the biggest one, right? Actually, a lot for biggest one, because it comes from consumers, from the laws, but also from the investors. And right now, the investors are really shifting their investment because they think it's less safe every single day to keep investment in something that is not carbon compliant.
Yeah, it's more about reputation. Real estate is huge at the moment. It's not so much about standards in CO2 measurement, and unfortunately, but it will get to there. So how achievable is it to decarbonize? So you say you need resources, so it's good for large companies, but for smaller ones they have less, but still they're more agile to really change and adopt new technologies and innovations. So how achievable is it overall?
Fighting climate change, It's going to be hard.
Decarbonization.
Decarbonization of companies, it's achievable. It's just, well, I don't believe that 100% of companies in 5 years will be carbon positive. I don't really believe in that. But though I think that every single company can really decarbonize a lot, and because none of our economic systems has been built around that until now. So a lot can be done, really a lot, and so it's true for global companies as well as for smaller companies.
Okay, there are easy steps and most difficult ones.
And a lot of partners, because right now, well, if you just a simple example, carbon measurement was really a tricky thing for SMEs maybe 5 years ago. It was really something that was expensive, difficult, and they didn't know even to whom they could go. Right now, only in France, you might have maybe 25 different startups working on that, and very easily you can have your carbon footprint, the carbon footprint of your company, and monitor the evolution of it. So now it's more and more achievable thanks to partners. So that's new.
Sure. Then back to Julien, considering that you need resources to get to that decarbonization, how much workforce do you think that is dedicated to decarbonization at Lucern Marazzi? A rough idea.
Answer will be simple, everybody. So there is no one in our processes that is not concerned about this change. And it's really, as I say, everybody's jobs. So, of course, we do have people who are only looking at that, climate change officer and so on. And that's a small team. But really, our main focus at board level is to ensure that everybody understands where we want to go, agree with that, and then that we have a strong plan, and that we put the resources to achieve this plan. And these resources are huge, but these resources are the guys who are designing the buildings, the guys who are building the buildings, the guys who are selling the buildings, because we need to sell them with a bit of a top-up, because we built it properly. So that's everybody's jobs.
Then I've got a very nasty question for you, Celine, but considering that you're decarbonizing, does it allow to carbonize, to emit CO2? So it's more that if you do something good on one hand, does it allow you to say, well, on that part, I can't really reduce, so it means that I've made my effort and, I've got good consciousness.
It's a very fair question. And this is where this differentiation between avoidable emissions and unavoidable emissions is very important. And this is the conversation we're trying to have with our customers. So really about focusing and implementing direct air capture, carbon dioxide removal for emissions that are really unavoidable. There is this path to reduction, and actually some frameworks are now really pushing companies to implement that. For example, the Science Based Target Initiative. If you want to commit to net zero emissions under the Science Based Target Initiative, you have to reduce by 90% your emissions, and then the 10% that's remaining, only these 10% you can target them with carbon dioxide removal, high quality carbon dioxide removal like ours. So it's really about that, and we're really trying not to just enable business as usual, but trying to have this conversation around that. So, and it's also about the companies really, how they're setting their targets and about how ambitious they are. You mentioned at the beginning that companies have to be ambitious. If we want to reach decarbonization in the corporate sector, we really need ambitious companies and sort of a mindset change in terms of how they work with a sustainability strategy about reducing and then adding removals on top for what they cannot reduce.
That's also why, that's also why they need to implement that kind of solutions into a more global mix of solutions. Inside a strategy, and so that's if they don't work inside the strategy and just say, okay, I'm going to buy some carbon reduction or capture, actually it's not going to work. Even if they wanted just to cheat, actually it's not going to work, and it's not enough.
Yeah, it's not a single solution. It's a combination of several.
Absolutely.
Technologies.
And the scrutiny is very high of the public. That people are really understanding what's happening. So there is really definitely a lot of communication around greenwashing and so on. So companies really have to be aware of how they also implement their strategies.
And on your side, Julien, do you think it's fair to address the largest CO2 emitters instead of being widespread. So I guess construction will be the first one to commit. So meaning that you're the ones that need to make the effort. You think it's fair?
Yeah, of course, the largest needs to contribute. Is it a question of fairness or it's an obligation? So yes, we are totally in line with it. I believe it's also a question of attractivity at the end. We need a vision. We need to be strong at board level. But at the end, what is very important for us is to see that it's all our young talent and so on who are pushing us on that. So we do not see that as really as a constraint. First, it's always good to promote the best, but it's also a very big opportunity for us to differentiate on the market, attract the best talent. So we are very excited and very positive. We see it really as a positive change, not something that, oh shit, we have to do something, we need to address a problem. No, we are really keen on it.
And Celine, on your side, the scope is more where the CO2 is emitted or where the CO2 has more impact on the environment? Geographically, I would mean.
So, because CO2 is a gas which travels extremely rapidly around the atmosphere, I would say it's rather the impact of the CO2 in general. So for us, for example, at the moment, we're doing direct air capture and permanent storage in Iceland. And wherever we can have our plants, access to renewable energy and access to permanent storage of CO2, we can actually have an impact on the global density of CO2. So it's not geographically linked, I wouldn't say. Yeah.
Getting back to you, Guillaume, you've mentioned it also about Europe, what it's doing at the moment. What role do you think that regulation has to do in decarbonisation, or even the responsibility of regulation in that field?
I think we had this comment. So we had Pascal Confin in our offices in October, and Pascal Confin is the head of the Environment Commission of the European Parliament. And so his team is actually writing the European Green Deal. And he told us that he was struggling getting in contact with business leaders that will ask him to move forward on the regulations. And so he was really like, okay, just bring to me some business leaders that are actually struggling because the regulation is blocking them from innovating. And actually yesterday, two of the pitches, of the company who pitched it, told me that they were blocked by some kind of regulation. And so I think that the regulation has always been following, some society movements like, okay, I'm going to allow that because actually everybody's doing that, so I need to give a frame to that. I think that now regulation has become more an engine, and they can really push forward because they will, on one side, obligate company to be faster because they say, okay, now we're done, climate change is here, so you have to change, and it's not a matter of just discussing it, we have to do it, so here is the law, just comply with it. But also they have a role of, being cautious of the needs of the businesses that are actually changing the things and adapting the rules to help them scale faster than the, let's say, the wrong business, the bad guys, but not the bad guys, but well, jobs to be done. So that's the thing. So I think they have, the role has a bit changed because now they can push the progress and help make it happen by giving their favor to one better business, more decarbonized business. So that's how I see it.
Okay, then I would ask Celine, is the danger that the regulation or the authorities would regulate the CO2 market and then perhaps limit your own business?
Yeah, that's a tough question. It's hard to look in a crystal ball what kind of regulations could actually limit our business. At the moment, the way we're working towards policy development is really as an enabler. So finding ways to bring the costs down through subsidies coming in different countries. So there's the EU Green Deal, which is very interesting. In the US, there are many conversations around building direct air capture hubs where you could have really some subsidies in place which could really enable to bring the costs per ton down in general. So And we actually see it rather as an enabler as well. If we can have a real price on the CO2 ton that is emitted, that is something which could actually help make it more tangible for companies to really start tackling their entire CO2 emissions portfolio and work with solutions which really remove them from the air permanently.
And on your side, Julien, do you think that regulation is helping or limiting?
I think we do need regulations. We see in many sectors, without regulations, it's sometimes more complicated. And this subject is really a complicated subject. And we believe we are in favor of regulation. Having said that, what is our meaning is that regulations need to set up minimums, and these minimums has to grow up every year. But we do not have to, we are never working towards achieving something by regulations. We always want to be ahead, yeah? So I would really favor that all these measures becomes norms as it goes, yeah? So regulations has to move with us. But having said that, limiting too much, that will probably impact innovation and so on. So it's where we need to find a right balance. And probably is really to make sure these minimum are growing together with us.
Yeah, the tricky question is also that it's not harmonized, is it? It depends country by country, and it's not exactly the same awareness level.
It's definitely not harmonized, but it's also, we see that as a global group as an opportunity because we are picking up some good ideas, and there is Switzerland. Everybody say, yeah, Switzerland is one of the best country for climate and so on. That's very good when it comes to transport. It's good to consumption of a building. When it comes to actually CO2 emissions per construction is not so good. So you probably France is better. So you really can find in different countries different good strong points, and our role is to merge all that and provide the best at the end.
Then I will have a very provocative question to all three. So we're speaking about decarbonization, but is CO2 capture the right problem to tackle? Aren't we too far from the problem? And for instance, in some years we'll discover that the biggest problem was water pollution. So what do you think about that? Are we getting, I know that the subject is decarbonization. Is the right question?
So do you want to go? Or?
Okay, I can start.
No.
So, at the end, it's the same when we talk about which solutions to remove CO2. There is no one single solution, and we really need to all work on many ways, being reduction, being captures, being big companies, small companies. Everybody has to do this path. After saying that CO2 is the only problem in the world, definitely not, and I do believe it has a very important role. Is it number one or number two or number three? I'm not expert, but it is definitely among the top priorities of the next 50 years. Water will probably be also one of them, pollution of air. So there are definitely many other complicated problems. But yes, my view is that CO2 is on the top priority.
I can only agree. It's been really proven now and communicated several times in the IPCC scenarios since 2018, when they really published this report about limiting global warming to 1.5, that we need carbon removal. So there is too much CO2 in the air. We're emitting too much CO2 on a yearly basis, and it stays there in the atmosphere for hundreds of years. So we need to find solutions to draw this down, and this is why CO2 removal and reduction is absolutely on a top priority. And of course, it's a multifaceted problem. So nature-based solutions, which will also have social benefits and so on, are really important in a consideration of a portfolio, especially thinking back to the corporate strategy. So there are different aspects that the companies and different things that companies can implement to make their strategy 360, but CO2 should be sort of the guiding line. CO2 reduction and removal should be it's a quantifiable target, so that's also something that's good to work with.
I think that's the mother of all crises, right? So it's when you work on plastic, basically when we felt that when we built We Don't Need Roads, because out of the 600-ish experts we have maybe 20% of them are really carbon experts. We have biodiversity experts, circularity experts, that kind of things, even business experts and that kind of thing. And because actually the strategies are actually 360 degrees strategies, and when you work on plastic or water pollution, you actually work on carbon. And so you need to work on carbon, you need specific targets on carbon, but actually this is also a good way of reading for all the different other crises. And basically, I think the good way to think about it is, okay, what could kill us? And so carbon can kill us, definitely. Water pollution can kill us. And so we need to work. Biodiversity is going to kill us. So how do we work on all these crises? I think the most steerable and the one we can really master is carbon for the moment, and we need to master it very fast, because also it's a longer term work, because if you want to be net zero by 2050 or I don't know what, you need to start a sprint that is going to start tomorrow morning, and so that's really a different matter. But it's not about, okay, I do carbon and nothing else. You need to work on every single side of what you can do for the world.
Right, many thanks. So I guess the public is eager to ask questions, so yeah, please.
Congratulations. The first one is always the toughest.
The icebreaker. Wow.
Congrats to you for what you do. Thank you very much. It's really positive to see. I have a question for Julien, Mr. Esch. You said you embrace a lot of people in your company. And I want to know which kind of action did you take that everybody feels concerned?
Yeah, we have on this topic we use the classic top-down approach. So we set up our goal. It's come from the top, and then how we train our people. We inform very regularly through forums, conventions, and so on of our progress. We ensure there is adhesions. We did survey of our team, survey of our clients, survey of our suppliers. On every project we are now building, we do a carbon impact assessment. We discuss that during the very important milestone of a project, before we start the project, during construction, at the end, of the other. So we try to put this topic really on an everyday business. So that's how we do it.
Will we have time for a last question? Is it allowed by Emily? Oh, yeah, we've got the go-ahead.
Hi, thanks for a great discussion. You mentioned all about the regulatory pressures, legal pressures, reputational risks, things like that. My question is more about the commercial pressures. So if you think about the consumer, to what extent amongst the customers you serve do you see that consumers are willing to pay a premium for low carbon footprint end products?
It's, may I? It's on what we see. Also because we have a marketing unit studying that kind of things, because it's a very good information to give to our client. Two things. First thing, it's a matter of awareness, which is different around the world. But everywhere there is something that is absolutely constant, is that awareness is growing. And awareness and knowledge, because it's a very complicated topic. And so, but with more and more companies offering commercial offers on the carbon footprint, the consumer is also more and more aware of what it means and how we can pilot it. And right now, we work, for instance, for a new bank that is dedicated to decarbonization. And actually, they are growing very, very fast, and they are maybe 20% more expensive than other type of new neobanks. So there is a premium on that. It's growing. Let's see if it's going to become something really common. Second thing I could say is on more overall on sustainability. for the last 15 years, there has been studies in every market on the world. And it was always like, okay, like between 64 and 75% of consumers were declaring like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna pay more for more sustainable products. I will really give this premium. Though it has never translated into the buying, the purchase behavior until 2 to 3 years ago. Now the figures are complying one to each other, and people are actually giving a premium, and actually the sustainable companies are growing faster, and they resisted better to the crisis, and so a lot of proofs are becoming true right now. But it's really a process that is right now, and yeah, that's all I can say. And actually, I don't know if I can push that, but you will correct me if you don't agree with me. But this is actually something that we could, solutions like Climeworks or other carbon-ish services are really working on that kind of topics. Like, okay, how do we become a day-to-day behavior? Like you pay your mobile phone subscription, and you have a carbon subscription because it's in your mind that actually you have a footprint and you have a subscription, and it's a service that you're ready to buy by itself, like not only on the products but by itself. So that's a very big question, but that's also something that we only have to work on, and it's improving day after day. I can see that, and it has been quite brutal this last 2 years in the purchase behaviors.
Maybe one.
Even if e-commerce has grown by 25% during the last 2 years. I know that, but there is something.
The bad guys, now we know.
Maybe one more point on that. On the real estate side, investors are generally not paying much more for that, a couple of percent. But what is sure is that if you do not deliver today a building which is compliant, the value of the building in 5 years is gone. So it's not a question of this extra percent. It's just to be sure that you stay in your market in 5 or 10 years, because we are in a very long-term process. Yeah. So that's very, I think, very important. It's not to be excluded from your market.
Sure. The final word. That's yours.
If I can just build on what Guillaume said, because I think that's exactly that. We see this discrepancy between what people actually say and do becoming less and less. So there's a very positive trend in this direction. And at Climeworks, we actually have a service for private individuals where people can subscribe and have a monthly removal executed in their names. And now we have 14,000 subscribers. So it's still a small community, but it's growing, and we see really numbers growing a lot over the past months. So there is this demand, there is understanding, and it's really a trend in the right direction.
Message full of hope. Wow. Thank you so much for this conclusion. Many thanks indeed.
Thank you, everybody. I have, before you applause, just 2-3 key messages. No bad guys, only jobs to be done. Be ambitious enough. Time is now. Measure is key. That's everybody's job. Avoid everything you can and compensate only unavoidable ones. So big applause to all of you. It was a passionate discussion. Thank you so much.